longest serving Brightworkers that anyone's ever known. Brian Cairney, Andrea Verrall and Graeme Strachan, commonly known as the Three Stooges. They have a combined length of service of 82 years. Wow, 82 years. Let's start. Graeme, 29 years ago.
Yep.
You started.
I was young then.
Very young. Andrea, 27 years ago.
That's correct.
And Brian, near enough to the day, 26 years since you started.
Yeah, I stood in the wrong queue and ended up in the recruitment side. I was meant to be a welder.
When you think about that combined service and continuous service, right, of 82 years between the three of you, and you've worked together for that length of time, brilliant. What a story. So, what we want to talk about today is what life was like back then, what's been good, what's bad, what are the things that you've seen change, and also a bit more about your stories, because you've all got a story to tell. So, Graeme, 29 years ago, you started in what has eventually become Brightwork Staffline. What were you doing?
I started on a kind of temp basis, timesheet, just the same way as our workers do. And I was doing recruitment for a company called Digital, who were doing computer manufacture down in Ayrshire. And when they got busy, I got a job, sort of thing, basically. And that was how it all started. I was single. I was just about to move to Glasgow. I was living down in Ayrshire at that time. And the world has changed a wee bit.
Just a wee bit?
Just a bit.
A wee bit? How did you recruit then? You know, you're talking about digital, I remember that's volume recruitment at the time.
Hundreds.
How did you find people and how did you register them? What was it like?
We would advertise either in the job centre or in the papers, when the papers used to do advertising at exorbitant rates. But you would advertise and be working off that ad response for probably a month or two.
Easy.
You know, and that would be the
so let me get this right, one advert and you'd have a month's worth of response?
Easy.
Wow.
Easy.
It was hundreds.
And the phone, they once advertised on the wrong phone number. It was a misprint of paper. And some wee pensioner got the wrong, was getting all their ad response. I felt hard sorry because
so basically,
there were 100 calls a day.
Yeah, so a pensioner was getting 100 calls a day for somebody looking for a job and she has no idea what this is all about.
Yeah, who's Digital?
So Andrea, then you were working, no, you started after Graeme, right?
Yes, I did.
So what did you do? How did you start? What's the story here?
I was in admin before I started, so I actually was working for a family-owned business. It was an electrician company, and I was looking for some extra cash, and QuickFit had just opened at the time out where I stayed, and I came into the office to look for, or to register to work for QuickFit. And while I was in my interview, the chap that was interviewing me walked out my interview, completely confused me, came back in, stopped talking about Uddingston and started talking about Glasgow, which threw me, and he offered me the position to work in their team. It was volume recruitment at the time, to do some administration, but to do some on-site and timesheet collections from QuickFit, of all places. Mm-hmm. And 4 interviews later I started. I started in the volume recruitment team working with Graeme. Brian hadn't started at that point, he came in a year later. And I was working in QuickFit and I would do on-sites there. I would collate all the timesheets. And then I went up, because I drove, I went down and did the same for Digital. And I went down and collected timesheets from there, brought them all up, and then we processed them and sent them to payroll.
So you collected timesheets. So this is, I'm just going back in time here.
Paper
copies, no fax machines, no emails, nothing.
No.
Collect the timesheets and then process them.
We drove to sites and collected, and at the time it was in the hundreds, because it was hundreds of people depending on the time of year we're working there. So we would go down, do a quick on-site, speak to the workers, speak to the client, accounts and then come back up the road with all the timesheets, and we had to process them and get them through to payroll, which was in Edinburgh, and they processed the payroll. And then very quickly I moved on and started training and moved up into the role I'm in now.
Very manual,
Yeah.
loads of phone work, Graeme, is what I'm getting from here. And nobody's mentioned drinks companies at all so far. We're talking electronics.
It
Was that time of the boom time of electronics in Scotland, then more investment. So Brian, you started in recruitment so much later than these two, so you're obviously much younger than Andrea and Graeme then. I can see that.
I'm going to send you Specsavers, because obviously they've not got prescriptions in them.
Okay, there's a rumour, Brian, that you started recruitment in the recruitment world just after World War II.
Yes, that's
Can you
correct.
tell me a bit about how that happened?
Started recruitment in 1987, working in the driving sector, predominantly industrial. And at that time, there was a multitude of obviously availability of candidates. The drink sector, as people know, is 24/7. There was long hours. Our office hours were 7:30 to 6 o'clock, Monday to Friday, or as business dictates. At that time in 87, there was no mobile phones. It was pagers you used for clients for out of hours. There was no computers, so everything was done on a kind of plan, and you had obviously a plan with all the clients' names down one side, the temporary workers who were at work in those clients, then you had Monday through until Sunday, and you ticked off each days that they worked, and then when you get the timesheet in the following week, you put in how many hours they had on each day, individual timesheets, 3 copies carbonised, yellow copy stayed in the office, pink copy gets sent to our payroll function down in Leicester, and the top copy went to the client, and that's how it worked. The client had to sign every single timesheet, and that's so when the invoice came out a week later, it had maybe 100 timesheets attached to the back of the invoice, and that's basically what happened.
Olden days for sure then. So carbonised, this sounds like this is just after Jurassic Park for some people that are watching this. This is pretty impressive. So carbonised copies, pagers, right? You know, wow, even I'm thinking back, and it's a long, long time ago. Things have changed a lot since then, right? And you've all been on a journey, and you've all worked very, very closely together. I know you all personally, but you've all worked very, very closely together in your industry, not just recruitment and manufacturing and the drinks industry. You know, you're so close to the business network out there. What do you think has changed for the good? If I can ask you, you know, just open up to all of you. You know, is there something in particular you think is so much better now than it was then?
Technology's had a massive impact, mostly for the good.
Yeah.
Mostly for the good. It takes a lot of the kind of manual error out of it. It's not perfect, but it takes a lot of the manual error out of it. And then even in the last couple of years since the pandemic started, that's kind of gone on leaps and bounds, sort of thing. So I think technology is probably one of the biggest things.
You said mostly because I can hear there's some things of technology that are probably irking you about here, and we've just heard about driving to get timesheets and carbonised ones.
Yeah.
So what do you think then if you look back? What were the good points about it then? Going back, way back was yours.
We were probably more of a people business in the sense that you
100%.
would be more in the face of the client and more in the face of the workers. We would be down on site at certain times, in peak every day. I remember getting a review from the gaffer at the time, and I worked out for part of that review. I was driving a day a week, just up and down to sites and stuff like that. And that was a wee bit honestly. And that was a
I
wee
can
bit
vouch for that because I was in it.
There's a story in there.
No, we want to get accommodate each other. I was a passenger.
Graeme nodded off for so long on a regular basis on his drives up and down to Ayrshire. And
I knew the road well.
he did know the road, so he would switch off, but it was probably because his seat was so far back, you could literally see Graeme's nose. So you took your life in your hands getting into
do
a
that
car with
anymore.
Graeme. It
So,
was quite scary.
I had to bring in one of the kids' booster seats. So
I don't do that anymore.
alright, falling asleep at a wheel was maybe a bit more acceptable in those days, but not so much now.
Socially acceptable, I would say.
But I think the big thing, going back to current days and previous days, was there was better camaraderie and better collaboration between us and our workers.
Yeah.
Technology, whilst it's been a benefit, has hindered that interaction with our workers. It's more transactional rather than being consultative. That's a downside for me, because we don't really kind of know them that well. It's very, very kind of them and us. And
Really interesting you're saying that, because it's about, you mentioned Graeme, where it was more people focused then, I think that was the words you used then, and then you talk about the leaps and bounds, particularly over the last 2 years in technology. But
Things like mobile phones, that changed us again. And part of that was the mobile phone was always switched on. So you get candidate and client calls at all sorts of times. Whereas
7
before
days a
it was
week.
pretty much, can I say maybe about 7 in the morning to 6 at night. You'd be
So work-life balance wasn't a thing then, it didn't exist then.
there's no working time right exactly at that point. So
That's a positive.
that is a positive that's come in, because we would have 80-90 hour a week time sheets and stuff like that as well. And they would ask your client would ask you to go up, can you have a chat with these guys and ask them to work a bit more overtime. And you're thinking, well, we worked 60 hours last week, so what's a wee bit more? Sort of thing. So culturally, I think a lot of things have changed. Just in the industry in general. They wouldn't expect people now to work 60 hours a week, never mind 84.
another thing that was prevalent, especially in the electronic sector back then, was the speed of delivery. Clients would phone you at 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon for 100 people to start at 10 o'clock at night on Friday night. That's how reactive you had to be. If you remember, our desks used to have, from weeks in digital, what Graeme was talking about, we knew from week 1 to week 7, they were very heavily weighted towards the back end. So the last 6 weeks of the quarter, it just zoomed up. So between weeks 1 and week 7, we would have desks that would have ad response received, ad response partly contacted, ad response screened, ad response booked into first interview, ad response booked into assessment centres. And the three of us used to base ourselves down in a hotel down in Irvine. Hospitality Inn. Used to hire the ballroom, and we would go down mop-handed, and we would have 3 sessions with 70 people at each session, and we would obviously interview, induct, and get these people ready for work later on that week. That's how many people you had available. You don't have that today.
No.
You don't, and you don't have availability, but you also have now the speed to hire is, taking out.
Takes a lot longer.
Take a lot longer. I'm going to throw one word at all of you, right? And you can shout at me if you want. But compliance then, what was compliance like then compared to now?
Don't ask me.
There was
Don't ask him.
Andrea was our go-to person. I'll rephrase, because when I started back in 1996, I ended up looking after these 2 guys. And at that time, Melville Craig was the company that I joined, and Andrea and Graeme worked for. They didn't do industrial temps, so technically I was brought on board to start, in essence, industrial temps, and that is Brightwork as it is today from that point of view. So the 3 of us worked really closely together, and basically what happened was that, you've got standards, you've got to make sure that we follow the processes of people, but Andrea would come on a Friday and go, that's missing. And Graeme and I would go like, who's she talking to? So there was an element of compliance and governance, but categorically nowhere near.
There was no right to work checks at that time.
Okay.
Right. It was a case of you made sure you had the bank details, the workers' bank details, so you can get them paid. You would do your interview, your assessments and stuff like that. And then once you get the references, that was it.
Done.
There was nothing else. There was no right to work checks or anything like that.
Yeah.
There was no need to upload anything onto the system. It was a new starters report, and that would be name, address, national insurance number, bank details.
That was it. Yeah.
All paperwork.
All paper.
Loads of paper, right? And then I think I can answer this for you. When you look at how we work now as a business,
Yeah.
you've no paper.
Yeah.
So this is all done through systems, and this is really, even over the last 4 or 5 years, it's become more rapid, this technological advance.
But a lot more compliance.
A lot more compliance, Andrea. Okay.
And it can slow things down,
Of course,
but it's a comfort not just for us but also for the clients,
Yeah, it protects.
because it protects everybody
Yeah.
to make sure that we've done due diligence to follow a process.
So from a business perspective, keeping ourselves on the right track, looking after our workforce, looking after our customers, it's really, really important to have that level of compliance, and I can understand that. So if we go back to, not so far back, but now you look at where we've come to as a business, right, and there's no denying the three of you have been integral in the growth and the development of our business model. And you know, when you look at the statistics of Brightwork staff line in Scotland, we're the largest recruitment agency in Scotland. We've got the largest share of the drinks manufacturing market in Scotland compared to any recruitment business. And to me that speaks volumes, but it's the people who have delivered on that, you know, right across. And you guys have always been integral to all of that. So where has if I ask, given your experience, your vast experience, why have we got to this stage? You know, why have we been able to be so successful? What's the recipe here? What have we done right?
Because we care.
Because, sorry,
We care.
we care. Right, okay.
I mean, I think when you look at how our business has kind of grown and evolved, it's very much about working in partnership with our customers. It's not here today, gone tomorrow. We really invest, and we've got some great relationships. And to retain some of the clients we've retained for the length of time that collectively, and we're only 3 people out of a big group of people out there, says a lot. We as a recruitment business, yeah, we will have attrition, but in the main, the nucleus of the people that still work in Brightwork have been here for a long period of time, and that gives customers confidence, an element of trust in what we can do. And we know our clients' businesses, because I've got a number of sayings I say, and one of these is we embed ourselves in our customer strategy so they think they can't do without us.
Yep.
And that's a fact of life.
Andrea and Graeme, is that Brian Bingo?
No, it's Brianisms.
That's Brianisms,
That's
sorry.
Brianisms. I used 2
Brianisms.
Brianisms
That's
today
right.
with the team actually.
When you said we care, 2 words you said, what is it in you? Why, you know, why do you do it?
Recruitment is a very difficult job because you've got a lot of people to keep happy. You've got, and again I'm going to use a Brianism here, but if we don't have our workers, we don't have any business. So we have to keep them at the forefront of everything that we do. We have to keep them happy, but you also have to keep your client happy at the same time. And then, you know, we've got our own workforce within here, so there's a lot that goes into it. It's a tough job at times, especially in this current market. It's really tough for the guys out there having to do probably maybe 2-3 times the effort put in to get people now. And I think it's a bit like Marmite, you'll love it or hate it. And if you don't love it and you don't have a passion behind you, it becomes really, really difficult. So you need to care. You need to care about what you do. And I think that shows with people if they care. Because they'll give a better service and they'll build better relationships, strong relationships and long-term relationships. And for us it is all about long-term. We don't want anything short-term, we want to be able to do our best and be able to keep that going.
Interesting points, I think, about relationships and how embedding ourselves and developing those relationships, and it's probably testament to your length of service. Got to say, if you make a mess of something in recruitment, it follows you around very, very quickly. Let's be honest, we all know that story. And the 3 of you are still in the industry, so you're obviously good at what you do, and that's why you're here. So well done. to the three of you. I'm going to change it a little bit here because I know you've worked together so long, right, and you know each other inside out. You know, I've seen how you interact. There's some stories. There's got to be something here about how you all behave, because you've been through high stress, high volume, high paperwork. Right? He's fallen asleep at the wheel. Right? We've got Alan's come out for Police Scotland to pick up on him. You've worked with Brian for a long time. I know many of us know Brian so well known. I've got so many stories about Brian, but you must know a lot more about this man than most others. What was he like to work with?
He's like my work husband. Brian and I know each other as well as we know our own partners at home. I think we've gone through a lot. Brian is very much a family man, and that is, I think, everybody, like, even when he's at clients, when he's speaking to workers, everybody knows he's a family man. He cares. He's very passionate about what he does, and that also shows to the clients because they know that he wants to get things done right. And the relationships, Brian's main strength is his relationships. Brian works really, really hard to build relationships, and he retains them and he keeps them. And as much as technology, we spoke about technology getting in the way of relationships, Brian's never allowed that to happen. He's the one person that, I don't want to call him a steady Eddie because he's not a steady Eddie, because he moves with the times, maybe not so much in the not so much in the technology side. But Brian very, very much keeps those relationships going, and doesn't matter whether it's, you know, a difficult situation. He never ever shies away from anything. He just rolls up his sleeves and gets stuck in, and he's always there to keep an eye on everybody else in the background. Plus he sings, that's the only negative.
Yeah.
His singing is the negative, because he genuinely believes he's a really good singer, and I'm sorry to tell
We were at
Brian.
St Vincent Police Office.
I remember.
Used to get onto the fire escape and sing out there, and it was quite echoey because it was a kind of courtyard, but it was like really high, you know, I don't know, 5 or 6 stories. And Brian, you could hear him, you know, the windows would be open. You could also smell cigar smoke coming in. Who's this guy?
I smoked cigars back then, Shan.
Cigars good for you.
Yeah.
So he smokes cigars, and he's definitely not got the voice of an angel then.
No,
I'm trying to say, right, okay.
I think Andrea's been on the CBD oil today.
Because I've been nice to him, he's actually going to go and get... I meant everyone. I'll not say it again, so make the most of it.
Okay, that's very kind of you, thank you.
So I suppose there's a recipe here that I'm hearing, right, and let's, going back to the start, there was volume, there was paperwork, there was driving, there was carbon copies, there was pagers. It was really intensive, but it was about in front of the workforce, in front of the workers, the candidates, in front of the clients, customers, all the time. And what I'm hearing from you guys is, that step back a little bit because of technology. So there's a benefit of technology. Sometimes we've lost that, that we're still people focused, but we don't have that high touch that we would have done before. And as what you're saying here, as I'm picking up on the relationships, is what's given you the strength throughout your careers here, because you developed them, and you said this, it's not the long term. This is about it's not the short term, this is about the long term. That makes me feel really, really proud to work for this company, really, really proud to work with all three of you. And I have to say, as we're coming to a close, when I look at all three of these people on the that we're talking to today, that having personally known them, I find it really, really, I feel really, really proud to say that I've worked with them for so long, and I feel really, really proud to say that having known them for so long and known them personally, I'm sure there's many people out there that will say the exact same thing. So being proud to work for Brightwork is key. It's a key driver for me about working with people that you know, that you trust, that are loyal, that give credibility to the business because of the way they develop relationships. And also they all do the right thing. It's the core of what these guys have done, what they've done throughout their careers. So I'd like to say on behalf of Brightwork staff line, a big thank you to Brian, Andrea and Graeme for everything that they've done to build this business, to make it what it is today. It's 82 years combined service. It's just amazing in this sector, in any sector. And just like to say on behalf of everybody in our business, thank you very much for all of your efforts. So thank you, the three of you.
Thank you, Shan.
Thank you.
Hang on,
Thank
I
you.
want that away.